Welcome back to the GCN Tech Clinic. Now this week, I've been let loose in Germany, not specifically to film the Tech Clinic, because that would be quite literally ridiculous. But anyway, enough waffle from me. Let's dive straight in to our first question. So our first question comes from Paul Chua, who says, "Hi Alex, Ollie and Manon. I'm obsessed with a clean chain, currently use a chain cleaner every week, and I was told the best way to get a sparkling clean chain is to remove it and clean it in an ultrasonic bath, for example. However, I understand Shimano's quick links are single use. Can I actually reuse the quick link, and if so, how many times? Or do I need to go with something where the manufacturer has said it's safe to reuse? Also, they said thanks in advance and well done to Ollie for dropping Contador." So, right, firstly, like you say, the best method to clean your chain is by removing it and putting it into an ultrasonic bath. However, if you don't want to remove it all the time, you can just use a really good degreaser and a stiff brush. Give it a thorough clean and degrease when you're just giving your bike its normal wash. And in terms of reusing the link, Shimano recommend only to use it once, so you're best off sticking to what they recommend. If you want to use a removable one that you can use multiple times, just use a Connex one or a KMC one. Best bit is they're gold. How cool is that? So our next question is from Mikas Klakauskas. Hopefully I've pronounced that correctly. They say, "Hey guys, I have a question about my through axle. I ride a 2020, very noisy motorbike. I ride a 2020 Ridley Kanzo C gravel bike, and lately I've noticed after a day of riding, the rear wheel is a bit wobbly. Not a big deal, but the through axle kind of unscrews itself a little bit. Is this normal? I've never experienced the same problem with the front wheel." Yeah, I can't say I've ever experienced a through axle coming loose on my bike. I mean, you're saying it's only happening on the rear wheel. Not sure why that could be, but the advice I would give is to take the through axle off of the bike, check the threads on the axle itself, and you can also check the threads on the rear derailleur mech hanger to make sure they're not damaged or corroded, or there's anything wrong with them that could be causing them to come loose. But also, you need to make sure that when you're installing the wheel and the through axle, that you do it up to the correct torque setting. This does tend to be a little bit tighter than most people automatically assume. I think in the region of around 10 Newton meters, but it's best to check what's recommended for your bike. Most through axles have it stamped onto the end of them, so just have a look and use your torque wrench to do it up to the correct setting. Oh, actually a little additional thing. Some through axles will have a little bit of a thread locking compound applied to them, so you could also try to do that. Just make sure you don't use one that's incredibly strong, otherwise you'll never get your through axle back out. Next question is from Kadar Kolkani. Says, "A red Ford Fiesta is faster than a blue Ferrari because the latter doesn't exist." That's referring back to a Tech Clinic from the other week where I said red cars are faster than anything else, irrespective of the brand. However, you are wrong. Blue Ferraris do exist. I've confirmed this using the power of the internet. So yeah, fake news. You can get a red Ferrari and you can also get a blue one. Next question is from, oh, this is going to test my pronunciation, School Chichi. Hopefully I've got that correct. They ask, what is the best way to remove dried up sealant? Firstly, the first thing I would do is to remove the tyre completely separate from your wheel, and then you can use your hands or whatever, like a tyre lever, for example. If you are using hands, make sure to put some gloves on. And you can just quite simply scrape and remove all of the loose sealant that's first there. That'll get most of it out of the way. And if you've got stuff that's particularly stubborn to remove, like I say, go to work with a plastic tyre lever, for example, or whatever you can get your hands on, but crucially, make sure it isn't going to damage the tyre itself. Once you've gone through that process, you should only hopefully be left with a little bit of sealant. And luckily, our good friends at Muck-Off have the perfect product for this. It's called a glue and tubeless sealant remover. You can quite simply spray it onto your tyre or your wheel to help remove the sealant. Just make sure you follow the instructions on the can, let us do it magic, and well, you can just wipe it off afterwards. Next question is from Darren Clare, who says, "I'm trying to figure out my FTP. However, when working my FTP out, should I use average watts or normalised watts over my 20-minute effort, for example? Which should I be more focused on?" So, when riding a test effort such as that, it needs to be a very linear and controlled effort with no big spikes in power or accelerations. So with that in mind, your average power should be very, very close to your normalised power. So they only tend to really differ when there is big fluctuations or when you're doing sprint efforts, for example. Now, if you are finding there is a big variation between that average power and the normalised power, it may suggest you need to use a slightly different testing method or find a different course or a different place to go and ride to conduct that test. I would say it needs to be within a few watts really, so if you're finding a variation, you might have to go back to the drawing board and assess for a new testing method. Next question is from JR. Hi GCN Tech, if disc brakes are so good, how come so many pros have crashed in wet stages in the Vuelta? That's a bit of an odd question because there is absolutely no direct link between the type of brakes people have on their bike and whether or not they crash or not. I'm almost questioning whether you put that in as a little bit of a joke one, but never mind. Anyway, yeah, it doesn't matter what brakes you've got, disc brakes or rim brakes, unfortunately, it isn't going to stop you crashing or cause you to crash prematurely, any difference what you otherwise would. Next question is from Sam Yole, who says, hi humans, I'm just curious, although I think I know the answer. I'd like to improve my top speed and climbing efficiency, and I was considering a carbon new bike, but then I wondered if I should really focus on losing some chub from my gut. Okay, yeah, interesting. What's better to focus on, and how do you know when you've lost enough weight to justify buying a new bike? There's quite a few little questions in there. So the overall goal of what you're trying to achieve is to reduce the overall system weight. So that's a combination of your bike and you. So reducing the weight on yourself, fantastic. Reduce the weight of your bike, fantastic. Now also, something else you should consider is the functional weight. So for your bike, for example, it might be that you get a bike that weighs exactly the same as what your previous bike did, but it might have a more functional purpose. So aiding aerodynamics, for example, that will then help you to go faster. But the thing to try and assess is what area you can save and reduce the most weight. And 9 times out of 10, there's more weight to be saved by losing weight on the person's body, so that could be you or I, than what there is to be saved in buying a bike. Now, I'm not here to tell you to lose weight or buy a new bike, but if you are able to do both those things, then you are going to ride significantly faster, and well, you're going to enjoy your cycling a bit more. And the best thing about cycling is, as a byproduct of riding your bike more and having fun, you're going to lose weight anyway. It's free. Happy days. Right, what have we got here? Final question, so last question for this week's Tech Clinic is from Mr. Longitude Latitude. They say, hey Manon and Alex, I've noticed that many of the presenters do not wear cycling gloves while riding. So they always wear them because their job requires them to use a computer mouse, and if they were to have a wreck, I presume they mean crash, they have a bigger chance of saving some skin, making work a little bit easier afterwards. Is there any reason you don't use them? Is it a regional or cultural thing? Well, I can definitely confirm it's not a regional or cultural thing. Speaking from my own experiences, I just prefer to ride my bike without wearing any gloves. It feels a bit nicer, you can feel the handlebars, it's easier, you can use your phone when you're stopped and having to do stuff. The only way you'll see me using a pair of gloves is if I'm racing, so like you say, keep your hands protected and nice and safe in the event of a crash, which, trust me, I have plenty of experience of, and the gloves have saved the palms of my hands. And the other example you'll see me wearing gloves is if it's cold outside, I'll just wear some long finger gloves. I absolutely hate having cold hands, and if my hands do get cold, I moan like hell and I go incredibly grumpy, which is probably a surprise for most people to hear. There we have it, that's the end of this week's Tech Clinic. Hope you found it helpful. If I didn't get to answer your question, sorry about that, and please do keep the questions coming in the comments section down below. And I know I often say we can't run out of time, but we have run out of time today because we're in Germany, we need to go and get dinner. I think we'll probably have the currywurst or a pretzel. See you later.